Well, hello and welcome to another session of Write Club. And this time it's actually Write Club with a purpose, because we are going to do in this Write Club 21 days to first draft. 21 days to first draft. Because here's the thing, everyone thinks it's impossible to write a book. People have been sitting on this notion of writing a book for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And they keep saying, I need to write a book, I need to write a book, I need to write a book. And then I tell them, you can actually write a book, first draft, in 21 days. And they go, no way. Well, it's actually pretty simple. 1,667 words a day for 21 days brings you to 35,007 words, which is a good sized book, depending on the kind of book that you're putting together. So does everyone agree that that actually sounds doable? It's only 1667 a day. Those of us who have been doing the free writing practice, the free writing sessions for 20 minutes at a time, it is impossible for me to know exactly how many words you get in your free writing sessions. Everyone's going to be different. But if you commit to every day putting into your calendar, which we're going to do in a moment, actual writing chunks of time, and then you start to assess how many 20-minute sessions do you need to do a day to get you to 1667 or 1700 or 1800? So it's as easy as that. Now, if you don't have 20 minutes a day or 20 minutes, let's say 3 times a day, if that's what it's going to take, then I'm going to say, if you think of it, how many minutes of YouTube have you watched today? How many minutes of scrolling Facebook have you had today? How many episodes of Atypical have you watched on Netflix today? Don't take that away. That's a great show, but finish that season. And then how many, remove one of those things that you spend in passive mode and replace it with active creation mode. And you can totally write a book in 21 days. It's actually not it's just a theory. You can actually practically get to write down 1667 words per day and have your book written. So who's up for that? Who's actually up for that challenge? So now, before we get into the structure, we've got to get into some accountability. I'm going to be your personal trainer, your coach. This is go write your damn book already. This is the biggest part of it, is setting up this foundation. So now open up your book or your calendar, and right now commit to how many sessions per day are you going to write over the next 21 days. And now you make this what you need it to be. If you take, let's say, the Sabbath off and you don't want to write, then you figure out, reverse engineer how many more days it's going to take you, or how many more words you're going to need to write in the 6 days that are remaining. Or if you know that you have some long days at work, remove those, but then put in your calendar how many more words, let's say you have a long work shift on Thursday, how many words do you need to work in on Friday to make this your top priority? And I say this, it's not actually this. It's you being accountable to you. It's you being accountable to your future, to your new identity. If you consider that you'll put this in the calendar and then let it drop off, then I'll just ask you, where else are you doing that? Where else are you committing to do something that you really want, that you know will change, will move the needle, will give you a new identity? Is it working out? Is it tennis? Is it spending time with your kids? Is it spending time with your family? Where else are you doing this thing that's like, yeah, I'll pencil that in, and then it doesn't get done? So right now, take the time, put it in the calendar. How many writing sessions per day? Is it going to be one big one, one long one, with a few long ones, a few short ones per day over the next 21 days or 30? And then when you're done that, I want you to take a fresh sheet of paper and I want you to write this. I, in your name, understand that I am undertaking an intensive exploration into my own creativity. I'll repeat that. I, in your name, understand that I am undertaking an intensive exploration into my own creativity. I commit to writing for at least, and then put the amount of minutes that you committed to writing in your calendar. Minutes per day. Or if you prefer, word count. Let's say 1667. And then you're going to start seeing over the next few days how many minutes it takes you to get to 1667 or whatever word count you just chose. I, and your name, understand that the resistance to writing will show up and that issues and emotions will arise for me to navigate. Yeah, Patty, you got it. And even if you have this written as the contract, I still recommend you write this out by hand. I commit to allowing my creativity to guide me, as well as to develop the essential foundation for my writing to flourish for the duration of the book and beyond. I'll reread that sentence just so that you can catch up. I commit to allowing my creativity to guide me, as well as to develop the essential foundation for my writing to flourish for the duration of this book and beyond. I commit to having my first draft done by, and give it a date. I commit to having my first draft done by, and give it a date. We are here in this 21 days to first draft until August 26th, so that sounds like a great date. But if you're watching this at a later time, you choose your date dependent on what you have put into your calendar. And then sign your contract and date it. You are now in a legal agreement with yourself. Legally binding with yourself. And just think of it. Would you ever break an agreement with a business partner? With a spouse? With a child? I saw you nodding there. With a neighbor? With a friend? Would you ever break a commitment that you had to anybody else? And yet, this is not about writing the book. That's the destination. The journey is about committing to yourself. The journey is about committing to yourself. And when it says in here in the contract about emotions coming up, yes. Issues coming up, yes. Challenges coming up, yes, because every single time you step up to commit to your soul's growth, the opposition, the ego, the devil, the whatever you want to call it, will come up to test you and test your resolve and your commitment to this. And life will start to break apart and you need to stay the course, because in that darkness, you are shining the light. Doing this work is what's going to give you light. It's going to let you reflect upon yourself. Who you be in this journey is who you be in life. Who you be in writing a book. There's no point writing a book if you're not speaking from your soul. If this isn't your soul speaking. Because then the people who are reading it are not going to get to know your soul either. They're just going to have a version of what you wrote on a paper. But when you're committed to your soul, then that's what shows up in the book. That's what shows up on the page. So are you with me? You ready? We're going to rock and roll here. Okay. First, rule of Write Club is we don't talk about Write Club, but there are no rules in Write Club, but there are rules with a W. There are rules in Write Club, and that is that everything that we share here is going to be held in privacy, held in reverence to each other. And the other rule in Write Club is that we're going to try doing things that we may not have thought we were going to write. As we saw in previous sessions, sometimes a rant comes out of us. Sometimes poetry. Sometimes the things that we didn't think would come out of it come out of us, and we didn't know where they came from. We didn't plan for that. And that's creative writing. And in this session, we're also going to look at the dreaded S word for creatives. Structure. Because creatives are like, give me the free writing meditation. I'll just write, and it goes this way and it goes that way. And it doesn't matter to me which way it goes, because I'm just writing. I'm loving writing. But to get real writing done, we need some structure. And the human brain loves structure. We love, every single culture in the world has an alphabet. We all use numeric system. We all have a way of doing things. We all have structure in our days. Everywhere in the world, we love structure. And books have structure. Movies have structure. And the really, really good movies and the really good books have a very distinct structure that's been taught and passed down and taught amongst writers. And even as a reader or just a watcher of a movie, you can recognize the structure in that movie or in that book without even knowing that what you're taking part in is the structure. Without the structure, the reader feels unsafe. The reader doesn't recognize, what's going on here? This doesn't look right. It's like Picasso said, first you learn the basics of painting and then you can delve off from there. You need structure, and then you take your creative license after that. So we're going to explore over the next 3 weeks, 3 different kinds of structures. And even if you're not writing towards that kind, you need to know it, because there will be areas that you need to employ one of the structures along the way. And I hope that makes sense. Let me actually get it into, rather than the objective, let me get into the subjective. Today, we're looking at the creative outline for a prescriptive nonfiction. So this could be your self-help, your how-to, your books that are the authority figure, you're the authority on this. Now, I mentioned that even if you're writing a different kind of book, you'll need to know this outline, and I'll tell you why. And why I'm starting with this outline, with this kind of structure. Even if you're writing creative nonfiction, such as memoir, or even fiction, which is more of an entertaining kind of book, or a memoir that is entertaining, or short story, all of those we'll cover in the next few weeks. But prescriptive nonfiction, the reason I wanted to start with that is that even in today's world, even if you're an author of other books, you need to write your own marketing. You need to write your articles for online magazines, your LinkedIn posts, your blog posts, your Facebook posts. You know, an author today, like in the old days, an author would write a book, retreat into the cave, and then send it to some publicist to do all this kind of work. Well, today, no one's writing it for you. You have to write this for yourself. So even if you're thinking of writing a more creative work, you actually have to start knowing how to write a prescriptive nonfiction to defend some of your work. To write about what it is, you know, that you are an expert on now. And whether you agree with it or not, that fiction authors, let's say, become experts on something, I'll just, you know, if you think of Margaret Atwood and you think of The Handmaid's Tale, if you were to read an article written by Margaret Atwood about politics or what's going on in reproductive health or anything like that, she will have taken this structure and written that article. Any author, John Grisham, who writes fiction, legal briefs, legal work, when he's writing a blog article or a media article, he's taking this structure. So it's really imperative that we know this prescriptive nonfiction. And I'll give you, as we go through it into the meditation, I'll give you an example of one of my favorites of a prescriptive nonfiction book. So we start a prescriptive nonfiction, or whether you want to condense that into a blog article or any other use. We begin with the problem. The problem has to be an opening story that introduces the concept of the book or the concept that it is that you're talking about. But in the problem, you have to give an inspiring vision of what's possible at the end of reading this book or at the end of reading this article. You can't leave the reader just thinking it's a problem. You have to give them I used to until I found out about this, as an example, and not that anyone here is writing this, but it's an easy example to be able to see. I used to be obese until I learned the techniques for my way of eating, and now I'm the fittest I've ever been in my life. Let me show you the way. You have to introduce within the problem the solution. Otherwise, if you're just giving the story of the problem, the reader will read it and think, I don't want to follow the advice of someone who's just mired in problems. This is going to be a whole rant. You give a background story. I used to be obese until I found out these easy ways of eating, and now I'm the fittest. Let me tell you, when I was a child, I was introduced to a way of eating that food was love. And so my whole life I chased love. And you give them the background story, the origin story, not your whole life experience, but how it relates to just that angle, that slice of the pie of your life. How you came to become the problem. And then you allow the reader to see that if they use the information in this book, in this article, they can get to the solution too. That it's not just an outlier, you're not just an outlier. They can have a solution too. In a prescriptive nonfiction, so it's self-help or how-to, there should be in the beginning of the book, an organization flow for the rest of the book. There will be how-to or exercises or something that the reader can do. Here's the big distinction when you're writing this kind of book. You're not writing this book for you. You're writing this book for your reader. So what you can expect, how you can learn from this book, how you can benefit from these exercises, how you too can have this journey and this solution. Now, imagine that you picked up an article by Margaret Atwood, and she gives the problem that her book had been rejected 19 times by the major publishers because they said it's too progressive. No one's going to want to read this. It's too dark. And she says, but we need to showcase this because people need to know how to get their power back before we turn into that. Aren't you hooked then on listening to what Margaret Atwood's going to give as her solution? So you see, even a fiction book can present it in this way. Even someone who's writing fiction, because there are always, even in fiction, there are always universal messages that we're trying to convey. So it's always about what you hope for the reader to get by diving into this book. So that's the first chapter. Then you go into the solution. What your life was like before and what your life is like after. Now, you follow up this technique for prescriptive nonfiction chapter after chapter after chapter. The problem, the solution. Different problem, different solution. Another problem, another solution. And each one of them has practices and exercises. In a moment, I'm going to share with you one example that is not what you think of as a self-help. And when I actually break it down, you'll see that the structure for it is actually quintessentially prescriptive nonfiction. Because rather than exercises or practices, it has meditations, which is in fact an exercise. It's a practice. So prescriptive nonfiction, problem, solution. Every single chapter opens up with a background story, has the problem and the solutions. I call this actually the SWIFT method. Every chapter has a story, the wisdom attached to that story. So sort of like the moral of the story. Information, so that's statistics or research or a quote by a famous person in that field. A formula, so for instance, E equals MC squared is a formula. You can have a formula that is, something that repeats throughout the book. And then the last one is techniques or tools. So meditation is tools. So every single chapter needs to follow SWIFT: story, wisdom, some information to back it up, formula, and tools and techniques. Now, as you progress with this sounds overwhelming. But if you actually consider it, if you write a blog post once a week, if one of your days of writing your 1667 words, you post as your blog post, then you will have this entirety of chapter by chapter repurposed blog posts that then you put together for a book. If you were to only write a prescriptive nonfiction, an authority book, it's a story, wisdom, information, formula, and technique every single time. And then you put those together and you have your whole book. When you have seen sometimes people saying, I wrote my book in a weekend, It's in fact a misnomer. They've in fact taken their last 30 blog posts and put them together over a weekend. But when you have the right structure for those blog posts or those articles or whatever, then it's easy to do. And this is the formula to do it. As we continue in Write Club, we're actually going to break down what the perfect story structure is. So whether it be a full book that's a story or a condensed story for a chapter, we're going to get that perfect story structure. For today, that is the prescriptive nonfiction book. You continue on with as many chapters to tell that story until you get to the very last chapter, and you now take that reader into how to use this, what I've taught you, in the real world. How to use this so you too can achieve. Now, if you think of it, if you have lived through anything that someone comes up to you and asks, how did you do that? You have an authority book. You have the makings for an authority book. Every single person that I've met, every author, minimizes what their experience is. If you've ever had a baby, if you've ever had a disability, if you've ever had a baby with a disability, if you've ever taken care of a parent, if you've ever watched a parent die, if you've ever held the hand of a loved one as they've passed on or as they've suffered grief, there is a book that somebody needs to read. So you need to write it. All of us minimize that our life experience isn't enough to make us an authority. And we're going to now work into a little bit of the personal to actually create a story that works within this structure. Are we ready? Before we go into the meditation, I'd just like to introduce. So one of the writing prompts that I often give you, and I've mentioned it before in previous weeks, one of my favorite living poets is a gentleman named David Whyte. And I've gone to some of David Whyte's presentations, some of his workshops, and he has a very distinct way of setting up the writing prompt with the exact same word or prompt repeated over and over and over. Just one series of words, one little paragraph to open, one little sentence to open up the meditation. And we're going to do that today. But I just want to give an example of what's available when you do that kind of writing. One of his students is a woman by the name, her author name is Araya Mountain Dreamer. I actually picked up this book in a bookshop in Scotland, and it happens to be that she's a Torontonian. I went all the way to Scotland and picked up a book. It's called The Invitation. And after we've finished our writing, I will read to you what The Invitation is. It's based on that. She actually wrote it at one of David Whyte's workshops, and it's based on that singular prompt. Now, this, in fact, is a prescriptive nonfiction book. It has stories of her own life, it has wisdom, and it has meditation. It's actually a self-help book. What's amazing about this book, and this is what's available to writing in this way, the invitation that opens this book is the single biggest, highest used marriage vows outside of sort of the traditionally, institutionally mandated vows. But if people are going to bring their own vows, the invitation the poem that opens the invitation is the single highest marriage vow that people use outside of, what the reverend or the priest or the rabbi or the imam tells them to do. So that's what's available. You can actually inspire people in a prescriptive nonfiction. And so with that, I'm going to turn my camera off so that you can hear me and you're not distracted by seeing me. I'll turn it back on after. And I'm going to read to you a meditation, and feel free to write. And then I'll end with the invitation before I finish the meditation. So get yourself comfy. Get out a pen, an extra pen if you need it, and prepare to write. So just listen to this meditation for beginnings before I invite you to start writing on a single prompt. So just sit down or lie down in a comfortable position and bring your attention to your breathing, following the breath as it enters and leaves your body, letting your muscles let go with each exhalation. Do this for a dozen breaths, just following the rising and falling of your body with each breath. Now, let yourself focus on one thing you want to do that is not currently part of your life. Let it be something specific and concrete, and imagine in detail what it would look like, feel like. It may be meditating or exercising daily, learning something new or doing something creative, dancing, painting, writing, singing, or simply being more patient with those you love. Pick something that has meaning for you. See yourself beginning this activity. Imagine the state of mind, body, and emotions ideally required to begin. How do you want to be feeling mentally, emotionally, and physically when you start? Imagine yourself as you ideally want to begin. Stay with this for a few breaths. Now, be aware of how you are feeling mentally, emotionally, and physically at this moment. Feel the gap, if there is one, between where you want to be as you begin living this aspect of your life and where you are. Imagine two selves. One, feeling as you would ideally like to feel to begin, and the other, just distracted or less inspired or more tired, less calm than you'd like to be. Let your attention follow your inhalation and your exhalation, and take a few moments to feel, without judgment, the gap between where you are and where you want to be, or where you think you should begin. And now pick up your pen and write the sentence that begins with, I was made to. And fill in that gap. And repeat, I was made to. And continue again as many times as you need. I was made to. What would you be doing if you were doing what you were made to do? I was made to. And is anything else coming up? Not just singing or painting. Were you meant to start revolutions? Were you made to topple armies? Were you made to disrupt? I was made to. Were you made to lead the way? I was made to. Were you made to be a lighthouse? Shine a beacon? Create things that were never done before? I was made to. Think back to your childhood. What were you made to do then that you're not doing now? I was made to. Put conviction in your writing. Write it as if you're saying, I was made to. If there's anger, conviction, determination. And maybe there were also things you were made to believe. I was made to believe. Maybe there were things you were made to help others stop doing. Maybe you were made to love someone, something. Maybe you were made for something bigger than you. Fill in as many times I was made to. Don't stop and think, just let your pen keep moving. I was made to. If you can't think of one, just write, I was made to. And then write one word, whatever word comes up. Keep writing, I was made to. Continue. And as you're writing it, I'll read you the invitation and see if that inspires what you're made to do. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for, and if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dream, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you have touched the center of your own sorrow. If you have been opened by life's betrayals or have become shriveled and closed from fear or further pain. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it or fix it or fade it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own. If you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes without cautioning us to be careful, to be realistic, to remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you are telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself. If you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul. If you can be faithless and therefore trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty, even when it's not pretty, every day. And if you can source your own life from its presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand on the edge of the lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes! It doesn't interest me to know where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after the night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done to feed the children. It doesn't interest me who you know or how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you have studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments. And write one more I was made to sentence, or as many as you need to, for the next 2 minutes.